Thank you very much, Michael Gitonga over there. And as you rightly pointed out, we are live from the Riverside Drive at the Musalia Mudavadi Center. And today we'll be talking to one of Kenya's leaders about his views on sports. And he's so passionate about football and also rugby. And so many questions have come through, people asking me to ask him what he thinks about the talent in Western Province, first of all, where he comes from, and again, nationally, what he thinks ails our sport. But we'll be talking to him also about AFC Leopards, a team that is so dear to him. The fact that AFC Leopards, over the years, since its inception, 1964, has had struggles. It has struggled, yet everyone says it's a big club, but then whatever they have achieved on the ground does not match the size of the name. But of course, as we always do with Sports Chat, we also give you information about what is happening around the world. And for Manchester United fans, they'll be watching tonight their side taking on Southampton at the Old Trafford Stadium, hoping and believing that Manchester United will beat Southampton to move to the third position after Leicester were thrashed by Bournemouth yesterday, and also, of course, Chelsea suffering a humiliating 3-0 defeat to Sheffield Wednesday United, which now paves the way for Manchester United to get to the top four, of course, in the chase for the UEFA Champions League title. But then slot. But then we have Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi right here with us, and as you can see, he's taking care of himself because of the COVID pandemic, and I want to believe that he's also taking every precaution to ensure that he remains, healthy. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Yes.
Of course, I must also take care of you.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to be with you, Tuscan, and I'll be glad to share my comments on sports. I'm a lover of sports.
Sure.
I enjoy sports, and it would be good to be able to exchange some ideas on this.
Your message to the country in the face of this pandemic, the government is saying that we have to take every precaution.
Yes.
And what do you think Kenyans should be doing at the moment?
I think the truth is we are not out of the woods. It's getting worse. As more people are tested, it's becoming apparent that the pandemic is much deeper than we may have thought. And therefore, I can only urge the government to monitor extremely closely because it could be possible that they may have to roll back on some of the issues that they had loosened on so that we can protect more people. We have seen that as the movement eases, there's an urge, people who are feeling locked up in a given area, there's an urge for them to surge into different parts of the country. And through that, the risk becomes higher. Yes.
Well, we just hope that Kenyans will be responsible enough to ensure that they take every precaution to ensure that we are safe. Now, we are here today talking about matters sports, and having read a lot around yourself, being a former rugby player for the Mean Machine.
Yes.
Are you still catching up with the Mean Machine?
Well, not as often as I used to.
Yeah.
Of course, with time, things change. But I'm still an avid supporter of rugby. At one time, I was even patron of the Kenya Rugby Football Union in Kenya. So take it from me that I follow rugby. I watch. Of course, it's many years, and there are many stout people out there whom we like watching. Yeah.
Of course, talking to you as being a national leader, it's a bit difficult for me to take you back to where you come from, that is the Western Province. But of course, people are not lost to the fact that you come from there, and there's a lot of talent, like in the rugby world, volleyball and all that. Do you think Western Province has realized its full potential in terms of exploiting talent in rugby, volleyball, athletics?
No, I think we still have to go much further. There's a lot of talent, not just in Western Province, but all over. I mean, we are seeing very good young men and women emerging every other time to play different sports in this country.
Yes.
So there is a lot of talent. And all I can say is that we now need to incentivize them even more than we have done before.
Exactly.
I think sports is first a talent, but we must find a way of making sports an investment venture, so that as the young people participate in the sports, can it be transformed seriously into an income generating activity,
Exactly.
into an investment, so that even as one's talent wanes, because one thing about sports is it has a certain shelf life.
Yes.
You're very good within a certain age bracket, and up to a certain point, you have to give way. But we need to find ways of having programs where these young men and women can also be part of a futuristic approach, so that if they were good between this year and that year, how can they be advised? What kind of investment skills are we putting into them?
Exactly.
So that as they give way, because nature is taking its toll, the resources that they have earned or they earn over that period can then be put to good use, and it can become a sustainable investment venture for them.
Yes.
Yeah, that is I think what we need to encourage.
And especially, looking at you, you are, of course, because of your stature in this country, you are president in waiting, of course.
Yes.
And would you think of having governors come up with the policies that would enable this talent come through and make sure that they invest in it at the county level?
Yes, it would be important. The whole issue of sports and investment in sports is something that we have not taken seriously before.
Yes.
And on this, I must also say that even during my time, because it was not seen as a priority when we are serving in government, the same way it should be now, the level of commitment may not have been as it should have been. But that is not a permanent situation. We can change that. And if what I have seen, for instance, Madam Amina, she's been quite constructive in the views that she's been putting on the table, and even proposing possible adjustments to the laws around sports. If we can work well and be able to then cascade some of these adjustments and policy changes all the way to the county government level, we will be able to start thinking positively. For instance, we need to ask ourselves, what is the tax regime around the sporting fraternity? The taxes as currently structured, and when it comes to sports, are they taxes that can encourage growth of the sporting fraternity, or are we stifling them? So these are issues that can be looked at very, very carefully, so that we can have a tax regime that is more friendly to sports people, young men and women, so that they can be encouraged to look at that as a serious investment section.
Actually, when you've just mentioned Ambassador Amina Mohammed, and
Yes.
So many people feel that she came into a field that she didn't have the experience, but so far she's done well.
Yes.
There's a lot she has to tackle, especially the politics within sports federations. Yet she also needs to sit down and lead the way in terms of putting in place policy, like about now the tax regime, as you talk about. But this is a ministry that has the culture and heritage, and also sports, and all these are very important, departments. Would you, if you had the powers, if you are the president today, maybe separate this and have sports as a sports docket on itself?
You see, the rationalizing government and ministries, remember, we have a limitation of cabinet slots. You have up to 22 slots. That's about as far as you can go. So when you're rationalizing government, you must look for what you would call linkages that can be put together carefully. So I think what we'd be looking at is not necessarily whether the Ministry of Sports is a standalone ministry. There's nothing wrong in integrating it with culture and art, all right? Because here you're literally looking for that kind of talent.
Yes.
What is important is what supportive legislation can come to anchor them and anchor all these areas. What kind of support can you give to these younger people when they're looking at their talent? And if there's going to be a taxation regime, we must look at it and say, is it a taxation regime that is crippling young people?
Yes.
Or is it a taxation regime that is allowing them to be able to thrive and do their business? Also, they need protection.
Yes.
Because you could also have a situation where if it is not well done, the young upcoming sports people can seriously be exploited by their so-called managers or handlers or some of the people who come in as scouts.
Yeah.
We have seen some very crafty fellows who get in, and before the young man or woman knows what has happened, they have been made to sign into a very complicated contractual arrangement, and all their sweat is then actually feeding somebody else as opposed to them. So these are issues that we could look at. For instance, even you could have a special legal team set up by the government or supported by the government, which can then help young people to enter into contracts. And those lawyers can be trained to make sure that they're safeguarding the interests of the Kenyan sports people or talented people.
Yes, if you are joining us, we are live at the Musalia Mudavadi Center here at the Riverside Drive, and we are talking about sports chat. We're tapping into the knowledge and the experience of Musalia Mudavadi, the Amani National Congress leader. And we are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we continue with the conversation. We look at the infrastructure, what he has to say about infrastructure. Infrastructure has a direct bearing in talent development and identification. Now you look at places like Busia. There used to be a team called Busia Simba, by the way, in the Kenyan Premier League, but I think it's now defunct.
Yes.
Yeah, and would you say that it's now urgent that all leaders must come together and make sure that such places like Busia have proper infrastructure?
Yes, they do. But let me tell you, one of the experiences that people may not know about myself is that apart from being a staunch supporter of AFC Leopards, I was actually involved in having the first professional football team in Kenya, and this was the Volcano United.
You mean it?
Yes.
Volcano?
Yes, I was one of the founder members of Volcano United.
I didn't have that.
And when one of the things we found then was a lot of resistance from the established soccer management structures in the country at that time, because they didn't want to go professional. Now, that to me remains a big lacuna in Kenya, particularly if you're talking about soccer and maybe other areas. We need to find a way of facilitating the laws to allow professionalism so that there is a clear mechanism to pay players. There's a revenue stream and they are paid. Because right now, a lot of the young men and women, literally, unless you're talking of the athletics, the others are dependent on the goodwill of their fans. They're dependent on the goodwill of the likes of Toksin and Musalia and others.
Say politicians, because are you...
No, it's not only politicians. When I say goodwill...
all our clubs now always want to go back to the politicians and get something to run their affairs. And you just mentioned FC Leopards, which you are a strong supporter. And FC Leopards for so many years has been depending on politicians to survive.
That is the message I want us to try and eradicate.
Yes.
Let us find a way of getting the politicians out of the way. Let politicians be supportive in the context like other soccer fans and other soccer supporters.
Yes.
Okay, they should not look at it as a privileged position, that because you're a politician,
yes,
then it is a privileged position to support AFC Leopards or to support Gor Mahia or to support. No, that should not be it. We look at the number of clubs that are Premier League clubs in the UK.
yes.
All right, who owns those clubs? Who runs them? What is the management structure behind those clubs? How are investors brought into those clubs so that you have a sustainable arrangement to be able to buy players? And once you buy players, you can give him a livelihood for the duration that he's working for that club and playing. So these are the things that we need to figure out. Where are the gaps in our law?
Since 1964, Mheshimiwa, FC Leopards being launched 1964, up to today, we've not been able to figure out how this club can...
No, but you see, this is the point I'm trying to make across. Let us revisit even some of the legal framework around soccer and help them. I gave you the example of Volcano, because when Volcano was set up, and at that time we got a sponsor from Japan to help us, and we had people like the late Jerry Saura, who was one of the members. I was the treasurer of Volcano at that time. And believe you me, the year that Kenya went highest in the All Africa Games 87 at Kasarani,
yes.
Do you know 5 of the players who are playing for Kenya were actually from Volcano?
I remember Volcano came with a lot of force. I think it was Motokura, the company from
yes,
Japan that
yes,
came on board,
yes. So this is the point I'm trying to put across, that we need to go a notch higher. There are also players, there are also institutions here. We have Safaricom, one of the largest entities. They've been supporting rugby for some time. We have others, institutions like the breweries, you remember, they're very strong and all this. So what went wrong? What did we do? Did we affect the taxation regime in a manner that now moved them away from supporting talent? For instance, we need to ask ourselves, if these guys were to set up and have a fund that is supporting sports,
yes.
they can choose which sport they want to. How can we give them a tax advantage? How can we make that tax deductible?
And
so that you can now have a sustainable arrangement to support soccer,
exactly.
or to support rugby, or to support volleyball, or even boxing, for that matter. So these are the things that I was saying. If we open up ourselves, and I know there's been an attempt through legislation to try and handle some of these things, it's just for us to go the full hog.
And I've just seen the other day, you were in the press and you announced that you are leading efforts to help AFC Leopards get back a piece of land that was granted to them by the government in the 80s. How far has that process gone?
Well, they have paid. They've brought me a copy of the receipt, because apparently they had not paid the stand premium, which was about 633,000. So I supported them. They've paid, so the processing is ongoing. But the journey has just started, because subsequently now resources must be raised to start developing that stadia. So we can, if we work out well, have a program, an investment policy. And AFC Leopards, I talked to Dan Shikanda, they have made the development plan.
Yes.
They're looking at how to try systematically to raise resources. And I would want everybody who is a supporter to support it. But also we can look at other areas like I've said, is there something that we can do under legislation to encourage large corporate players to come in and support their effort? And I think we can do it.
One of the questions that fans keep asking me is that the leadership from Western Province, and make no mistake, FC Leopard is a national team, and it has support from Northeastern, Central, but then they keep asking questions about the leadership from Western Province, that it has not done enough to ensure that this club walks on its feet. But the other day I saw CS Eugene Wamalwa led efforts and helped the club to have a bus. You've come in to help and get the piece of land in place. You strongly believe that the politicians can lead this process and help this club to work?
No. Politicians, this club and its journey and its future must first begin with the management of the club. They are the ones who need to have a strategic plan, define it, and promote that strategic plan so that there is a buy-in from all Kenyans who love the game and who support the team. That is where we should be going. I can tell you it is not sustainable to imagine that a politician or two will underwrite any club in this country. I'll give you an example. When I was patron of AFC Leopards,
I remember those days.
I used to pay salaries for these players. And I can tell you it was not easy. You know, they have families. They have to pay rent. They have to feed those families. They have to take care of their medical bills. The insurance maybe it was not covering them. You know, so there's got to be a very well thought out arrangement, but it should not be politically driven. It should be driven by the management of the club, and this is why I was telling Dan Shikanda that you have a challenge as the chairman of AFC with your team. You must find a way of making it attractive, making your policies attractive, so that people can come in and be supportive. The other very successful manager of AFC Leopards as chair was, of course, Alfred Sambo. Okay, but times have changed. Economic circumstances have changed. So we must provide different approaches to support these teams.
I just hope that the chairman of FC Leopards, Dan Shikanda, is listening to this, because the Honorable Musalia Mudavadi has told him that he's got the responsibility. The challenge is now upon him. And I think so far he's done his bit, because I've seen he's tried to rally all the leaders from Western Province to come to the rescue of the club. But as you say, the most important thing is the structure at the club. But people also look up to you to ensure that all those corporates come to the aid of FC Leopards.
But, you know, corporates make a decision on a clear plan. They make an analysis of the plan. They want to know is it a well-structured, is it a vision that they can invest in? That's how corporates will come into this. And this is why I say that it has to start with the team. We will encourage them, no doubt about it. But it is not supposed to be about politics.
Exactly.
Because corporates will also shy away. Because if they think it is all about politicians, whether it is right or wrong, the reputation is that if you put any resources somewhere where there are politicians, it will not be long before you realize there's a scramble and there's nothing left. All right? So I would not want to have AFC Leopards or Gor Mahia or Homeboys or any other team that we have today to be a team that is seen from a political perspective. That is not good for them.
That's a very important, powerful message.
We should see it as sports, and it should be packaged as sports, And that is how corporates can now get attracted, because corporates will want also accountability. If they're supporting you, they also have to answer to their shareholders. And if indeed it is something that reflects, that we can put into law so that they can benefit, they can have it as a tax benefit if they support. Say, for instance, if they pump 200 million into AFC Leopards on an annual basis, assuming it is Safaricom or assuming it's whatever, if they can do that, what are we putting in place for it to be a tax benefit
to the corporate?
To the corporate? You know, so these are the questions that we need to ask ourselves.
Sure.
And if we get it right, then you'll find that you will not have a shortage of sponsors for a lot of sporting activities in this country, whether boxing, whether cricket, whether rugby, whether swimming, okay, and even athletics.
Actually, you just mentioned boxing, and as we wind up this conversation, Kenyans are still waiting for another gold medal in boxing at the Olympics. And people say the only gold medal that we've had in this country is from Wangila Napunyi, was apparently from Busia, Western Kenya. Do you think we can get back to that level where we can produce another Napunyi Wangila?
Well, yes, we can. Unfortunately, it was quite some time back, and he's no longer with us. But I can tell you that it is possible. It is possible. We've seen good talent. We even saw the lady boxer. Congestina, Zarika. So we can produce this. And even there were heavyweights like Kasamba and even Ruben Dolo. Ruben Dolo still has the build, but I don't know whether he has the flair anymore, but he's there. So when you look at it, you can get these guys, we can nurture them. And as I said, the sky is the limit. It's just that I would encourage the Ministry of Sports to work more aggressively, so that they can have a bigger share of resource allocation from the national budget to help them activate the talent that is lying out there.
Mheshimiwa, it's been a pleasure, talking to you, picking up some, nuggets of wisdom of what needs to be done to ensure that sport is productive for our Kenyan youth. Right. And we just wish you well, so that when you are at those positions, you'll be able to put in place those policies. Well,
I look forward to it, because we want our sportsmen to be there. We remember how our athletes have given us a lot of pride.
Yes.
That is important. My only caution to them is that around what we are beginning to see as increased cases of, or if not increased, more frequent cases of doping allegations, whether they are right or wrong. I think it is something that needs to be looked at very, very critically. Is it real, or is it a strategy to undermine the advantage that Kenya has always had in this particular field? But whatever the case, I think the sporting authorities need to go deep into it, so that we don't undermine one big advantage we've had, and that is in the field events. We have been very good there. Field and track events, we should not be let down. Okay. You imagine a situation where perhaps, even as I said, some of the scouts or some of the people who come, do they all come with clean hands?
That is
or are they also Trojan horses coming into the Kenyan athletic scene with the sole intent of discrediting it? So that is something to look at.
Thank you very much. That has been Musalia Mudavadi. We've been live from the Musalia Mudavadi Center here at the Riverside Drive, and we have really benefited personally. But of course, I know the sports world will also look back and say, well, we wish him well, so that at one point he'll make sure that he actualizes that. And AFC Leopards fans, you've heard it from the staunch supporter himself.